The voicemail said my sister-in-law had gone into labor 3 weeks early. My brother said he'd call me back. He never did. That's how I found out I was about to become an aunt for the first time. A voicemail from a woman I barely knew, and then silence. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the morning everything actually fell apart. The morning I learned exactly how much I was worth to the people who raised me. It was a Tuesday in February. I remember because the overnight snow had turned to freezing rain by the time I woke up, and I could hear it tapping against the bedroom window, like something trying to get in. I had a bowl of oatmeal I didn't finish. I had a commute I didn't make it to. And I had a phone call that I've replayed in my head almost every day for the past 4 years. My husband's name was Oliver. He worked in commercial roofing, one of those jobs that sounds simple until you actually understand what it involves. Up before 6, on a site by 7, climbing scaffolding in every kind of weather, because that's just the job. He'd done it for 8 years. He was good at it. His crew trusted him. He died on a Wednesday in November, 2.5 years before that Tuesday in February. A structural failure on a job site in Mississauga. And he was 31, I was 28. We had been married for 14 months. We didn't have children yet. We had a 2-bedroom apartment in Hamilton that we'd just started to actually decorate. We had a savings account we were building toward a down payment. We had plans for a trip to Portugal the following spring. We had a whole life in front of us that just stopped. The weeks after Oliver died are mostly a blur. I remember my mother coming to stay with me for a few days, and then leaving because she had things to get back to. I remember eating crackers for dinner more than once. I remember sitting on the floor of his side of the closet because it still smelled like him, and I didn't know what else to do with myself. What I don't remember is anyone sitting with me through it. Not really. There was a workplace safety and insurance board claim eventually. His employer's insurance paid out a settlement. I won't say the number because it's private, but it was enough to cover his funeral and pay off the car and leave me with some breathing room. Not wealth. Breathing room. I kept working. I kept going. That's what you do. 18 months after Oliver died, I found out I was pregnant. I know how that sounds. We had been separated by death, not by distance. What happened is that I went on 2 dates with a man I'd met through a mutual friend. His name doesn't matter for this story because he was gone the moment I told him. A text message. Didn't even call. Just gone. So I was 29, widowed, and pregnant, alone in a Hamilton apartment, working a 40-hour week in healthcare administration, and trying to figure out how to keep it together. My parents lived 40 minutes away in Burlington. My father had recently retired from the civil service. My mother volunteered at the library twice a week and had a book club and a garden she was very proud of. They were not struggling financially. I want to be clear about that, because it matters later. It matters a lot. I called my mother when I was about 10 weeks along, told her everything. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "Well, this is a lot to process." She told me she'd talk to my father and they'd figure out how to support me. She said she'd call me back that evening. She called back 2 days later. She told me they were there for me, they loved me, and they'd help however they could. Those were the words. I held on to them. My pregnancy was medically unremarkable until it wasn't. At 31 weeks, I went into preterm labor. The hospital was St. Joseph's in Hamilton. The doctors stopped the labor temporarily. They gave me steroids to develop the baby's lungs faster. They monitored everything. They told me what was happening in calm, measured voices that I now understand are specifically trained to keep patients from panicking. I didn't panic. I just went completely, utterly still inside. She came at 33 weeks, my daughter, 4 pounds, 1 ounce, with a full head of dark hair and a cry so small it sounded like it was coming from somewhere far away. They brought her to me for 40 seconds and then took her to the NICU. I lay in the recovery room alone and stared at the ceiling. I called my mother from that room. "She's here," I said. "She's in the NICU. I'm okay. I think I'm okay." My mother said, "Oh, sweetheart," and then told me she would come as soon as she could. She came 3 days later, stayed for 2 hours, and drove home. My father didn't come at all that first week. He sent a card. My daughter was in the NICU for 26 days. 26 days of scrubbing my hands at the sink before I could touch her. 26 days of sitting beside an incubator in a rocking chair, reading out loud from whatever book I'd grabbed on the way out the door, talking to her like she could understand every word because the nurses said it helped. 26 days of leaving every night and lying awake in my apartment wondering if she was okay. The bills started arriving in week 3. In Canada, hospital care itself is covered under provincial health insurance. But the NICU at 33 weeks involves things that fall us outside that coverage. Private consultants, specialised equipment charges, the particular way that our system has of making sure that even when you think you're covered, you're not entirely. And then there were the costs I hadn't anticipated. I couldn't work during this. I was burning through my sick leave and then my emergency savings. I had rent. I had car insurance. I had all of it. By week 4, I was looking at a gap of roughly $14,000 that I did not have. My credit wasn't bad, but it wasn't strong enough for a loan that size on a short timeline without collateral. I had already cashed out a small TFSA I'd been building. I had already asked my HR department about advancing my vacation pay. I had already done all the things you do when you are trying desperately to handle something on your own before you ask for help. I called my parents on a Sunday night. My mother answered. I explained the situation. I told her it was a loan, not a gift. I would pay them back. I had a plan. I just needed to bridge this gap so I could bring my daughter home. The hospital wasn't threatening anything dramatic, but there was real pressure and I was running out of room. My mother said, "Hang on, let me get your father." I heard muffled talking. Then my father came on the line. He listened. He was quiet. And then he said something that I have never fully been able to put down, even 4 years later. He said, "Honey, we can't do this right now. We have the Banff trip." I thought I'd misheard him. "Sorry?" "We leave in 10 days, he said. "We've had this booked since last March. It's our 40th anniversary. We'd lose the deposits if we cancelled. We're talking close to $4,000 in non-refundables. It's not a good time." I sat with the phone against my ear and I looked at the ceiling. "Dad," I said, "my daughter is in the NICU. I need $14,000 to bring her home." "I understand that," he said. "But we can't just pull that kind of money out right now without disrupting things. We'll help you figure something out when we're back." My mother didn't say anything. I could hear her breathing, and she said nothing. I said, "Okay." I said it very quietly, and then I said I had to go, and I hung up and I sat in my apartment for a long time without moving. My brother called me the next morning. He'd heard from my parents. He was sympathetic in the way that people are sympathetic when they want you to feel heard but not actually helped. He said he and his wife had their own financial commitments. He said, and I want to make sure I get this right because I've thought about it so many times. He said, "You know, Oliver's parents are still around, Have you thought about reaching out to them?" I want to tell you what I said back. I want to tell you I had some perfect, cutting response. But I just said, "Yeah, I'll think about it." And then I hung up. Oliver's parents, for the record, are wonderful people. They helped me, without hesitation, without conditions, without making me feel like I was an inconvenience. His mother drove to Hamilton the next day. His father called his financial advisor. Within 72 hours, the gap was covered. My daughter came home 11 days later in a car seat his parents had bought, wrapped in a blanket his mother had knitted while I was in the NICU. I did not call my parents to tell them. They went to Banff. They sent me a photo of Lake Louise. It was very beautiful. I named my daughter Willa, after nobody in particular. I just liked how it sounded, how solid it felt, how it seemed like the name of someone who would not be easily moved. She was home, she was healthy, she was gaining weight, and I was so fiercely in love with her that sometimes I'd just sit watching her sleep and feel this strange mix of joy and grief and fury all at once, all tangled up together. My parents came to meet her 6 weeks after she came home. My father held her for about 5 minutes and called her a little fighter. My mother brought a casserole and stayed for dinner. It was very normal. It was so normal that I almost thought I'd imagined the phone call, but I hadn't. I told my parents, calmly and clearly, the following spring. Willa was 4 months old. We were sitting at my kitchen table and my mother was telling me about a new restaurant in Burlington she liked, and I waited until she was done and then I said, "I need you to know that I haven't forgiven you for what happened in February." My father said, "What do you mean?" I laid it out, all of it. The loan, the phone call, the Banff trip, the $4,000 in deposits they'd protected while my daughter was in the NICU. My mother started to cry. My father said it was more complicated than I was making it sound. He said they'd had those plans for over a year, he said. They hadn't known it was going to be that serious. I said, I told you she was in the NICUs. I told you I had a gap I couldn't cover. What part of that wasn't serious? Nobody had a good answer. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I told them I needed space and that I would let them know when I was ready to talk again. And then I went no contact for 8 months. They sent letters. My mother left voicemails. My brother texted me once to say I was being unfair and that I should consider their perspective. I read all of it and I put it in a folder and I didn't respond. When Willa was about a year old, I let my parents back in, slowly, carefully, on my terms. We never talked about February again, not directly. There was a surface-level peace that I think my mother was genuinely relieved by and my father found convenient. I loved them because they were my parents and I also carried this knowledge of what they'd chosen. And those two things just lived in me, side by side. My father died 14 months ago. A stroke. It was fast. My mother passed 7 months ago. Cancer. She'd been diagnosed the previous year and declined quickly at the end. I was there for both of them, for the record. Whatever they'd done, they were my parents. I showed up. What I did not expect was what happened next. My brother called me 2 weeks after my mother's funeral. He had, it turned out, found our parents' will, both of them, and what he told me sent something cold straight through me. Our parents had updated their wills 4 years ago, right around the time of Willa's birth, right around the time of the phone call and the Banff trip and all of it. In those updated wills, the estate, their house in Burlington, their RRSPs, their investment accounts, all of it adding up to somewhere just over $900,000, was divided as follows: 70% to my brother, 30% to me. My brother told me this like he was reading out a weather report. He also told me that he had spoken to the estate lawyer and that the will was valid and that there wasn't really any point in me challenging it. He said, "I think they just felt like I'd been more present. It's not personal." I sat with the phone and I thought, 70/30. 70/30, after what happened, after Banff, after all of it. I thanked my brother for calling. I told him I'd be in touch. I hung up, and then I called a lawyer, not to challenge the will specifically. In Ontario, the legal grounds for contesting a will are limited, and while I had questions, I wasn't sure I had a winnable case on the division itself. What I had was something else. I had evidence of a loan that was never formalized, a gap my parents could have covered and chose not to, and a brother who had been quietly managing our parents' finances in the last year of their lives in ways that the estate lawyer, when I contacted them directly, found somewhat difficult to explain. There were withdrawals. In the last 14 months of my mother's life, while she was ill and my brother had power of attorney, there were withdrawals from her accounts that didn't neatly correspond to her expenses, not enormous amounts, but not nothing. My lawyer's eyes did a particular thing when I showed her the documents. She said, "This is worth looking at. I have not spoken to my brother in 4 months. He has sent 3 emails. In the first one, he said I was making a mistake. In the second, he said our parents would be devastated. In the third, and this is the one I keep coming back to, he said, you were never the most responsible one. You made choices. You had a child on your own. They were just trying to set things up fairly." He said that about Willa, my daughter, who his parents left alone in a NICU rather than miss a trip to the Rockies. I didn't respond. What I did was gather every document I could find. Bank statements, the estate accounts, correspondence, the timeline of the power of attorney, everything. I gave it to my lawyer in a binder. She said it was one of the most organized intake packages she'd received. And I said, I've had 4 years to understand that I need to document things. The case is ongoing. I can't say more than that right now, because my lawyer has told me not to, and I have learned, finally, late the hard way, to listen to the people who actually show up for me. What I can tell you is this: Willa is 4 years old. She is at the age where she narrates everything she does out loud, where she asks why approximately 40 times a day, where she is obsessed with a particular picture book about a polar bear who travels to different countries, and she makes me read it every single night. Last week she asked me if she had a grandpa. I said that both of her grandpas had gone to heaven. She thought about this for a moment and then said, "That's okay. We have Grandma Carol." Grandma Carol is Oliver's mother, who has never once, not once, made Willa feel like anything other than a full and beloved member of her family. I think about the Banff trip sometimes. I wonder if the lake was worth it. I wonder if my father, standing at the edge of that blue water with a camera around his neck, felt anything. I wonder if my mother, that night, said to him in the hotel room, "We should have helped her. I'll never know." I hope she said it. I hope something in them understood what they'd chosen. But I stopped waiting for the apology a long time ago. I stopped needing it, actually. That's the part nobody tells you. There's a moment when you stop, hoping the person will finally understand, and you just move forward. You take what you can carry, you leave what you can't, and you build something from what's left. I'm building, it's slow. Willa has a college savings account that her paternal grandparents contributed to and that I add to every month, even when it's not much. I have a slightly bigger apartment now in a neighborhood with a good school. I have a small circle of people who I know, with absolute certainty, would drive to Hamilton at midnight if I needed them. I have a case in the hands of a very competent lawyer who uses the word recourse in a way that makes me feel like I'm finally in the right room. And I have Willa, who is quite honestly the most interesting person I know. That has to count for something. In fact, I've decided it counts for everything.